Welcome to Beyond the Lab, a series by the Office of Career Development within the Biomedical Research, Education, and Training Department of the Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. My name is Kate Stewart. I'm here today with Holly Algood, who is a postdoc alum. We're so glad to have you back. Tell us about your time at Vanderbilt.
Sure. So I came here in mid-2004 and I worked with Dr. Tim Cover, and he's a faculty in the Department of Medicine and the Department of Veterans Affairs. And so I had a dual appointment coming in as a postdoc, and I really joined a biochemistry bacterial pathogenesis lab, which was different from my graduate training, which was in immunology. And when I joined his lab, I kind of launched into both projects to learn the bacterial pathogenesis side of things while also maintaining some of my immunology training and starting an animal model in his lab. And finally, I think the two worlds started to merge for me.
Okay, so what was next after your postdoc?
So after I did a postdoc, I was applying to a lot of different career development awards, and I had the benefit of being able to apply both to National Institute of Health and Department of Veterans Affairs mechanisms. And I landed a career development award in the Department of Veterans Affairs. And that was actually the first year they had opened the award up to Ph.D. candidates. It had previously been only an option for MDs. And so it was a 3-year award, and it gave me 100% research time and about $50,000 to start and about $65,000 after that. And so once I landed that award, I was able to get the Department of Medicine to convert me from being a postdoc to a research instructor. So I stayed housed under the mentoring of Dr. Tim Cover and Dr. Keith Wilson, also a VA-funded immunologist and gastroenterologist. And I was able to work under that funding mechanism independently for 3 years. And then after that, that opened up the opportunity to apply for VA Merit Awards. And a VA Merit Award is really the equivalent of an NIH R01. There's some advantages over an R01 system, though. One advantage is that you can pay up to about 75% of your salary with that one award. And so when I applied for that award and received that in 2011, the Department of Medicine put me on the tenure track, because then I was able to fully fund my lab, bring in research assistants, and keep my line of research going. And so I continued to work on Helicobacter pylori, the bacteria I had started working on in Tim's lab, but I now had a niche at Vanderbilt in immunology of Helicobacter pylori, whereas Tim was working on pathogenesis and toxins, and other investigators here focus more on epithelial cells and cancers. So we all have our own niche within Vanderbilt.
Okay, so if you had to talk about, if you had to break your day down into percentages, so what do you do, how do you break up your day? What are the specific things that you do during your day?
Yeah, so I guess if I just think about the last couple days as an example, I have 2 research assistants. One has been with me for almost 3 years, so she is pretty independent. So almost every day I just kind of check in, see how things are going with her. A couple times a week we meet on a regular basis, more like an hour or so, to kind of sit down and say, what's going on with the animal breeding, what do we need to plan long-term for, what do we need to plan short-term for, are there any equipment needs arising. We kind of revisit some of the laboratory maintenance issues with her. And then we, of course, talk about data for probably at least 30 minutes to an hour almost every day, depending on how quickly she's producing data for her research project. My second research assistant had just joined the lab only about 6 weeks ago, and so she's just finally finished her training in terms of all the paperwork. And that can take a lot of time, but now we're at this point where I get to do some hands-on training, and I still do that. I think that's important and something I really enjoy about my job, and I like having a small lab to be able to do that. And so probably the last week or so, I've been spending almost 4 hours a day hands-on in the lab with her. In addition to that, I've been spending a couple hours a day working on a course that I am launching next week. It's an integrated science course in the medical school. And this is a new course for us, and it's been really fun for me because I love curriculum development and I love education. And so it's an opportunity for me to use some of the tools I kind of shifted in terms of learning when I was a postdoc, in case I wanted to do a teaching heavy career. And so this course integrates clinical medicine with foundational science. So I'm co-directing it with a clinician. And so right now it's coordinating rooms and lecturers and designing what activities are going to be done and what assessments are going to be done. So I'm spending a couple hours a day on that right now. But then I also, of course, spend, an hour at least writing, if not more. I try to carve that time out early in the day so that it gets done. And then right now, not as much, but oftentimes it's 2 to 3 hours writing and just doing paperwork and email. So there's always those little things. But
So is this the path that you felt like you wanted all along, or is this something that you discovered as you went?
I think this was definitely more of a discovery as I went type thing. So I went to a private high school, and while I was there, my biology teacher, had her master's degree, and she was the best teacher I had. And I attributed that to the fact that she had gone on and gotten a master's degree. And so from the start, when I went in undergrad, I thought, I know I'm going to get an advanced degree because I think I want to be like Miss Kiankio. Like, I was like, that's what I want to do. And so I went to a liberal arts college, so I got my bachelor's degree there, and then I applied for graduate programs. And along the way, I kind of toyed with the idea of doing like physical therapy, and I had been an athlete and I liked that connection to the athletes, but I just loved science and I just really wanted to learn more about how systems worked. And so I applied to graduate programs, and that's when I learned that, you actually can get your Ph.D. like a sort of skipping the master's, like you're kind of getting your master's along the way. Right. And that if I got my PhD and entered one of these programs that was research intensive, it would be paid for, and I wouldn't have to pay for my education, but I would also be learning the skills of research. And I was at my liberal arts college was Mount Union College, and it's a small college in Ohio. And the faculty there had all obviously chosen to be in small liberal arts college to teach. And oftentimes that's a hard job to get. Mm-hmm. It's very competitive. But I thought, that would be really cool to go back to a small school, maybe even be involved in soccer. And so I had kind of set my sights no longer at going back to being a high school teacher, but going back to a liberal arts college. And my mentor at my liberal arts college said, you're probably not going to really like graduate school. Education, like the actual research experience, is really hard and nothing works. And he put it in this light, like I wasn't going to like it. And so when I went to graduate school and really fell in love with the actual hands-on science and being able to produce data and work with the cells and work with the animals and work with my hands, I really actually fell more in love with it than I thought I would. And so when I went to do a postdoc, I still loved teaching. And I kind of was like, what should I do? I don't know that I really want to run my own lab yet. And everyone said, well, they'll always hire a good researcher to be a teacher, but you may not be able to go the other direction. Like if you decided to go teach now, it will be more difficult to go back into the research world. And I said, yeah, that's probably true. So then I explored the postdoc opportunities. And really with that is when I guess I just gained the skills and realized that like being in the lab and having the opportunity to teach graduate students and teach research assistants, like is actually teaching. And that as a faculty member, even at a large institution like Vanderbilt, I have access to other teaching opportunities like this integrated science course with the medical students. And I also, in the summer, teach with the program for talented youth. So I am teaching high school students 2 weeks out of the summer. So I think there's more freedom in the faculty position than a lot of people think. And you can still make time for what you want to do. There's pressure to have a lot of grants, but you can make your lab work with what you have if you want to do other things too. And so I've made a situation for myself that I can do some teaching while also running my lab at a big institution, and made that a priority for me.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. And I love that you melded your interests too. So tell me though about your skills. I mean, what are the skills that you maybe got in your postdoc training, and then something that maybe surprised you that you needed to have to do what you do now?
Yeah, so I think some of those skills that I got were because I sought them outside of the actual lab experience. So teaching comes to mind. I think when I knew that I wanted to pursue some teaching, I looked at the Center for Teaching here at Vanderbilt and the opportunity to get a teaching certificate. And one of the cool things that was integrated within that program was the opportunity to actually do research on teaching and to do research on assessments and how students learn. And I had never really thought about education from a research standpoint. And so that's been really useful moving forward, especially into this integrated science course with the medical students and understanding how do assessments work and what works best. So that's been very helpful. I also think that learning to write grants was definitely something that was a key and happened as a postdoc. Because as a graduate student, you do it as a skill for a course.
Sure.
But actually getting the feedback from the Institute of Health and also getting VA feedback from researchers has been so key to really understanding what works in the grant writing mode. Mm-hmm. And my mentor is an excellent writer, but our styles are really different with grant writing and manuscript writing. And I was a better grant writer naturally and not as good at writing manuscripts. And he worked with me in and out to get my grant and my manuscript writing, the different styles worked out because they really are very different. And that has helped me a lot. I can write manuscripts much quicker now thanks to his input on how to kind of structure them and what language to use.
Cool.
So that's been really good.
Yeah, that is good.
Yeah.
So tell me we talked sort of off camera, but about your work-life balance. I mean, this might be a great position for what you have in your life. So tell us about that sort of seesaw.
Yeah. So I am part of a dual career family, and when we came to the Nashville area, it was for me to do my postdoc. But I knew I was asking my husband to leave a position that he loved in Pittsburgh. And I felt guilty about it. And we were newly married, and it was kind of like we would have this slight argument of whose job was more important. And it wasn't an argument that my job was more important. It was kind of like, but your job is more important, because we both saw the good of what we were doing. And my husband is in the field of rehabilitation science. And when I was searching for a postdoc, I knew that since I was asking him to leave one job to go to another, that I might need to make it work wherever we went. Mm-hmm. And the fact that, they called Nashville the Athens of the South because there were so many universities here, I thought there might be an opportunity for me to find a teaching position after I postdoced and be able to stay here if he found a position he loved. And he found a great position, and he works for a power wheelchair company, and his position has changed and evolved over the years, and now I'm not even totally sure what his title is. He's the vice president of product development and marketing, I think. But the evolution of his position and watching that impact has motivated me to want to also do better in my position and make it work for the family. And so it's been great to be able to continue to get grant funding and keep my lab working here, while he has also been able to achieve in his position and directly impact people with different abilities. And so we've raised 3 children. They're not raised yet, but we're raising 3 children. Mm-hmm. And we really have learned to use our community as support. The dual working family is difficult, but it's also been an advantage of staying. Being a postdoc here and then staying as an instructor and an assistant professor, we didn't have to develop new friendships and a new support network here. Right. Those same friendships that we had 12 years ago are friendships that we still have, and that has been a benefit for us all around in terms of balance.
Great. That's great to hear. So if you had some words of wisdom for current trainees, current grad students and postdocs who want to do the path that you've taken, what are some things that you would tell them sort of pearls of wisdom as
Yeah.
they go on?
I guess I would say never underestimate the power of mentorship, and looking around to finding those faculty members that exhibit what you would like in your life, right? And so finding people that are both supportive of a spouse in a career, but also raising families and successfully doing so while landing grants and having a happy lab, asking them very specifically how did they do it or how do they do it, what works for them, like what has been difficult, because I think finding mentoring not just from your advisor but from those around you is a huge key. And then also, especially like even at Vanderbilt, using the resources that the university provides. And so, of course, there's the career development office here, but even at that next step, with your mentor or with your advisor, using some of the grant writing studios and some of the resources that are available, like for Victor, and making your manuscript go to the next level through those resources, and actually sitting down and using the advice from people. I think one thing that I've seen sometimes happen in trainees is that they think everybody's criticizing them, and they still feel like they're trying to achieve a grade. They're still thinking about graduation as if it's a letter grade and it's a stamp of I'm done and I've done what's approved of, and not as gaining life skills. And if they would recognize that like their committees are there to kind of support them and help them grow in all their skills, and not really worried about like whether or not they publish this on the highest journal, but that they do clean science and ethical science, and that would be more beneficial to them moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your
Sure.
time. We really appreciate it.
Sure.